Hey everybody, thank you so much. Welcome back to this channel and thanks for joining. I have a special guest here today. He's one of the industry best, located out of Montgomery County. He's been in the industry for over a couple of decades, but he looks much younger than he is. So I'm going to want to introduce you guys to Kevin Grolick. Kevin, can you please just introduce yourself real quick?
Hey everybody! First of all, Chris, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I mean, I've been in the business now for 30 plus years. I got into it when I was 12. Actually, just a joke, but I wasn't much older than that. But anyways, yeah, I work for Compass in Potomac, Maryland. Lifelong native of Montgomery County. Once again, been in the business over 30 years. Raised a family of 4 doing this. So. You know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know everything, but at the same time, I've done and I've seen a lot and had a lot of experience through the business and seen a lot of different market shifts and transitions, which I think is kind of what we're seeing right now.
So Kevin, that's a great segue that you're talking about because, you know, we started in a crazy refi boom and then now it went into a completely hot seller's market where just lines are going wrapped around the block, and we're hearing in the news about this crazy slowdown that's happening and maybe possibly going back into 08. So from your experience, do you feel like that's what's going to happen, or where are we right now in terms of your experience in the last 30 years?
Yeah, that's really the question that so many people have. Like, you know, you hear all the time, you know, is there a bubble? You know, is it going to burst? You know, has it burst already? And so here's what I would say. No question, the market is transitioning. I mean, look, interest rates have gone from the low 3% at the beginning of the year now to upwards. It's been at 6. It's come back a little bit, but I mean, it's jumped up quite a bit in a short period of time, in 3 or 4 months. Also, combine that with just inflation in general and the stock market having dropped. I mean, there's no question that that's going to change the market some. The question is, you know, do we see a bubble? You know, is this like 08 repeated all over again? And I personally do not believe that it is, and these are the reasons why I think so. Number one, you know, the 08 market from the early 2000s was really built, frankly, on a lot of phony baloney mortgages. You know, you had people, no down payment, no documentation. They were getting interest-only loans, which simply means that every month they made a payment, they were applying nothing towards principal. I even saw negative amortization loans where every month they would make a minimum payment and the interest then would be added on top. And so they were actually digging themselves more in a hole. And it was just, once again, I think we can now sit and say that 15 years later, that a lot of these loans are what we would definitely consider to be predatory. And you had people that really shouldn't have been able to buy a home buying homes. I mean, frankly, all you needed was just a pulse, the willingness to sign a few documents, and you're in. And, you know, I don't think that there's very many people out there that would agree that that is a good business policy and that that's the way that, you know, loans should be originated, and that's the way that people should be able to buy homes. You know, when the thing started crashing and going the other way, here all these people that bought in 03, 04, 05, you know, they had no equity in their home. As the value started dropping, you know, they just, a lot of them just, you know, threw the properties, you know, basically stopped paying their mortgages, went to foreclosure, which just, you know, completely sank the market. You know, everybody that I've sold a home to really in the last 15 years have been fully documented. Most of them have very strong down payments. And Chris, I think you know this, they've gotten historic low fixed rate mortgages, which aren't going to adjust. I mean, even though the market's gone up some, those 3% loans that they got a year, 2 years ago, you know, they're not adjusting at all. They're going to stay the same. So people have skin in the game. I don't see this huge wave of foreclosures happening, which would then saturate the market and put you know, downward pressure on prices. So I just don't see that happening. My hypothesis is we're going to see more of like a 90s market. Now, I know that's probably a little bit before your time, Chris. I don't even know if you were born then. But let me tell you, you know, the 90s market, you know, coming off of a hot 80s market just was one that kind of plateaued and, you know, rode, you know, 8-9 years with, you know, probably a little bit of modest give back, maybe 1 to 3%, you know, depreciation to, you know, over the period of 8 or 9 years. My sense is we're plateauing. I don't see it crashing. There probably will be a little bit of give back just because things were just so overstimulated and and just such a shortage of inventory that I do think we'll probably see prices come back a little bit. But I just don't see a crash occurring or the bubble bursting.
Do you feel like the shortage for buyers is going to alleviate? Because, I mean, from certain statistics, it says it's going to take at least another 2-3 years for, new builds to kind of catch up to what the shortage was, because builders weren't building at the same pace as they used to prior to '08. And then from there, they kind of got a little bit shocked and worried. And they said, okay, we're not going to overbuild. Now we're going to slowly build. And they've been building at kind of a deficit. And then all of a sudden, this influx of buyers come into the market, and now they're trying to play catch up, and it's going to take a few years. How do you feel about that? It's like, with the recession, people probably losing jobs. There will be a little bit of foreclosures happening, most likely, with the upcoming recession, but probably nothing like the '08, because those were more just defaulted because they weren't even qualified to pay for it. So what do you think about like the shortage and the upcoming recession?
Yeah, I mean, once again, there's always going to be some foreclosures that occur at any time. I just don't see a lot of them happening right now or anytime in the near future, because anybody who really purchased, even within the last year, has equity in their home, and if they put 20% down, let's just say, or even 10 or 5%, I mean, people just don't walk away from that easily like they would when they put nothing down, zero skin in the game. So yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement that we probably will, as seems like we're moving towards a recession. We probably will start to see some foreclosures, but I think that most people right now, when they get into tough times, they're probably going to call somebody like me or another agent and say, hey, you know what, listen, lost my job, gotta sell, and we're going to rent for a few years, before, really, they just get absolutely, pummeled. So, we'll see. We'll definitely see some foreclosures. As far as the building side of things, I mean, I still think that, we have ridiculously low amount of inventory right now, from new homes to certainly resales, which I follow a little bit closer, or much closer really, than the new home sales. But inventory is not just going to jump up overnight. There's always going to be people that need to buy their first home, buy a move up home, potentially need to downsize. I mean, that's always going to be there, regardless of the type of market that you're in. And so there will always be that market. But really, once again, there's still right now, just in Montgomery County, we're about 15% less inventory than we had this time last year, which was about 30% less inventory than we had the year before.
So last year was hot, and this year slowing down, and we're still less in inventory.
We're still less in inventory. What I love watching inventory trends, because to me, that's where really everything kind of, that's really where the story is being told, Yeah. But right now, as of May, now we have not gotten our June statistics for Montgomery County just yet, but as of May, we were down in Montgomery County about 17% from the same time last year. And May of last year, what was everybody complaining about? There's no inventory. And so now it's 17% less than that. But the interesting thing is, at the beginning of the year, the inventory was like closer to like 30% less than it was, So we're seeing that even though it's at a deficit from where it was last year, it's not as much of a deficit as it was earlier in the year. And I think that's simply because, some demand is pulling back. And let's be honest, some people have been squeezed out of the market. When you go from 3.25% up to 5.5%, 6% for a fixed rate right now, better than me, but I would say that your buying power is about 30%, 35% less than it was 4 or 5 months ago.
Absolutely. I'll link the video somewhere on the one that you just did, but you did a great math on one of the videos about, a $500,000 mortgage at 3% versus 5%, it's over $600 in payment. And that definitely, when people are trying to hit their maximum DTI to purchase a home, because they're doing overbidding and stuff, it's going to be pushed out of them easily. That's why I share with clients all the time these days, is like, when you look at homes, check in with me every time you find a house, is because, we don't know where the rates are going to be. Right. Is it going to be in the 6s, 7s? Is it going to be below? I don't know what the HOAs are. And when their DTI, the mortgage math is tight, we have to make sure that that ratio works. Otherwise, they're going to put an offer in something that they can't even afford.
Right. Right. No, very, very, very true. Especially when the mortgage market is as volatile as it is right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
have the same. Obviously, we're, we work in the same industry. I always say like your realtor and your mortgage lender are like your left and right arm for a home
Yeah.
buyer. And yeah, I mean, there does need to be a lot of checking in these days because we've had some buyers who've now been out with us for 2 or 3 months, and things have changed, dramatically over that time. And so, so yeah, we're always constantly checking in. As I would say, you're right. Every buyer should do that.
You bring up a good point about lenders and realtors being the left and right arm for clients. Like, what do you say to that? Because sometimes it's like a client comes in and they're focused only on listening to either the lender or only listening to the realtor, when in fact it's a tag team, right? It's a team that comes in and supports them to get them to the finish line. Like, what advice do you want to give to them to make sure that both sides are probably participating like teamwork? And then maybe also to folks like in the industry that might be watching this as well. It's like, hey, realtor, future realtor out there or lender out there, you guys need to collaborate better together. Because, in 30 years, I'm sure you've collaborated with good lenders. And then in 30 years, you've collaborated with people you probably never even spoke to. Maybe you've got one email from them at settlement, So what advice do you want to give to the buyers, the clients of yours, as well as, maybe our colleagues out there?
Well, that's a great question, Chris. And actually, I hope that you don't edit this out, but I'm going to sit here and say, because I've said this on some of my own videos on my YouTube channel, that really I can speak to the real estate side better than I can the mortgage side. But let's be honest. I mean, we come from the same gene pool. It's either, you want to go into real estate. Am I a lender or am I a realtor? I mean, it's like flip a coin almost. So, we kind of have this like love-hate thing going, but what I know is a fact, and I say this on many of my YouTube videos, is that, this is a business right now where 10% of the agents are doing 90% of the business out there. If you flip that around, 90% of the agents are only doing 10% of the business. So there's a huge difference in the quality level, the experience level that you get. Just because you have a license doesn't mean that everybody's equal there. And it's not coincidental that 10% of the agents do 90% of the business and 90% only do 10. So you want to make sure as a home buyer, and, heck, as a new agent out there, that you get yourself in that 10%. If you're a home buyer, you need to be working with somebody who has experience, who's highly networked, who's networked with the top agents out there, because guess what? So much goes on behind the scenes that people would never know about. So many times when I'm working for home sellers, we get 3, 4, 5 offers in. Oftentimes, it's very rare that one stands head over heels better than the rest. Usually there's 1 or 2, 3, kind of like a horse race, that are jockeying for that top position. You got 1 or 2 that are just way behind that aren't considered. And I'm going to tell you, oftentimes, my clients will say, well, Kevin, what do you think? And I will tell you, when everything is even or darn close to it, oftentimes we rely on that relationship that we have with the other agents. If I can tell my sellers, hey, look, I've worked with him, I've worked with her on 5 different transactions over the last 5, 10, 15 years. She's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. They're going to get this thing done. The other ones, I'm not saying anything bad about. I just don't know them. They're brand X. And this is a known brand here. That a lot of times that's how decisions are made. And, so it really means a lot who you work with, the real estate agent, the amount of reviews that they have. Are they positive reviews, negative reviews, their standing in the business industry, and how well they're networked with the other agents out there, because that's how things go down. Flip it to your side. I'm not sure how those numbers work, but I will tell you that in my opinion, my humble opinion, I believe that 90% of most mortgage lenders are horrible.
I'm not going to disagree. That's why I entered into this space, because there's a vast opportunity.
You, my friend, are in the top 10%. And you advocate for your clients, you collaborate with them, you collaborate with the agent so that it's a team. And that's really what the buyers need out there. They need that collaboration. They need the left hand and right hand steering in the same direction. Ultimately, it's the buyer's choice on things. I mean, my job is to counsel, advocate, just like yours is, and to give them good options and choices. But in the end, sometimes they don't always make the choices that you or I might agree with, but you gave them their options and choices. So at least they're going in with eyes wide open. And at least we know that, we're going to be steering the ship in the same direction there. And I think that is like so critical. I've actually done some videos, by the way. So I've mentioned my YouTube channel. Everybody check it out and subscribe. Grolig. But I've made some videos on the things that we look for and the things that a buyer should look for in choosing a good lender. And really and truly, some of the pitfalls I see out there are, of course, a lot of these online companies where they're just going to be a number, or the big banks, go into Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whatever, where, you got to call 1-800 number to get in touch with anybody. There's an extension that's 16 digits long that you got to go through. You're never going to talk to anybody. They're in South Dakota somewhere or San Antonio. They have no idea what's going on in this market. They have no idea who these buyers are, and places like credit unions that are open from 8:30 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. You get no cell phone number for the mortgage lender. You can't contact them on weekends. And I tell my buyers, deals are done in the evenings and on the weekends. If your mortgage lender is not available, you're going to lose deals. And you're going to lose opportunities there because that other agent who's working for the seller is going to want to talk to the mortgage lender, make sure everything is buttoned up. Everything is what it appears to be from the pre-approval letter. So, I need a mortgage lender who works the hours I do and works when deals are getting done. So, once again, I have a very low opinion of most of the people in my industry and your industry. But I love working with real professionals from the mortgage side like you, Chris, as well as I love working and collaborating with other agents from whether that be with Compass or Long and Foster or any company. I just appreciate quality in the business. And unfortunately, that's lacking many times.
When you brought up quality a few times, if you had to pinpoint like one or two words that, really makes it distinct between what's a quality realtor or lender, and I think it's pretty similar, versus a non-quality, what would you say they are? Or maybe I flip it around. Another way to ask it is, when you were starting out, how did you identify what was quality to get you from, because you started out in the, maybe not even a 90%, maybe, it's a 0%. And then you moved your way into the 10%. Like, what did you do? How did you identify what it was to get into that space? I was fortunate when I first started out that it was interesting. I worked in an office, and we're talking going way back. We're talking like early 90s. I worked in an office that had, at the time, I would guess maybe 75, 80 agents. Okay.
And there were 4 or 5 that were really strong. I mean, who were kind of at the time, some of those Mount Rushmore agents, that were doing 40, 50, 70 deals a year or so. But then you had this huge drop off where you just had the other ones, once again, the other 90% hanging out by the coffee pot, bitching, complaining about, the deal that went south or the buyer that screwed them over or whatever, and it just was, nobody really had to teach me it. It was just kind of like, wait a second, these people over here that now we're starting to, create teams, starting to get like assistants that were actually working for them, where they were not doing everything, wearing all the hats, who were producing big numbers, they weren't hanging out at the coffee pot. But I don't even think they knew my name, I mean, it was like, hey boy, it's like, But then you saw all these other people that are hanging out the coffee pot, complaining, wanting to go out and, hey, when's happy hour, and it was just like, it was very easy for me to see the traits that were, led to success, even though nobody at the time really took me by the hand and said, like, Kevin, here's the path. You could just kind of see it on your own. It was just like the focus, the determination, the working on your craft, to be the very best you can be, and taking it serious and focus, it was just easy for me to see. And so, yeah, I mean, that was kind of like my first, my first experience, just kind of seeing quality and how, the focus and the hard work really turned into income when you had everybody else that was complaining about hanging out in the coffee pot, looking to go to the Tuesday brokers open where you get free food. It's like, oh my gosh, it was just pretty eye-opening to me from the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because like that I think one thing that I kind of picked up on is that consistency and quality, right? Consistency and effort. Because even in the lending side, I notice either, maybe some of my employees that's with us now or have departed, or folks on the other side, that I hear stories about, is they were great in the beginning. They were super responsive. And then all of a sudden, communication drops off. All of a sudden, hard to get in touch with. All of a sudden, I don't know where the file is. And I think I hear that consistently on either the realtor side or the client side, the borrower side as well. And it's that what we realize on the lending is that consistency of like, I think communication is key, because I hear the biggest complaints about like, I don't know where the file is. Is it approved? Are we close to, clear to close? Are we good for settlement? And everybody's left out in the dark. And that consistency of communication, and then the speed and availability that you brought up too, I think is probably the points that I think I could tangibly touch. That if people said, "Hey, what's the difference between a quality or non?" It's that you can tangibly touch it, and the other 90%, good luck. They're gonna sell you a bunch of lies, saying like everything is fine, loan is fine, don't worry about it, and then 3 days before closing, nothing has been done.
Well, Chris, I mean, over the years, I've had many cases where either the mortgage lender or the other realtor I'm working with have literally gone into witness protection during the transaction. All right, not literally, but it's like, what? I mean, I thought there was something, peculiar about him or her, but, I mean, they must be in witness protection because you cannot find them. Yeah, I mean, what I see also in this business, and I'm once again, I'm including your side in it as well, but definitely my side, because I know it better. I see oftentimes there's a bunch of different types of agents. There's ones that are the ones that go in for the kill, meaning they want the sale, and they'll say or do whatever they need to say to make the sale. And then once the sale's done, it's like, okay, I'm done. Hate to say it, kind of like a cheap one-night stand, but makes you really feel special. But I see a lot of agents who are like that, who it's like, and I'm not saying that they take advantage of buyers. I'm not necessarily saying that, although I have seen that as well. I'm just saying it's like they need the sale. They're more concerned about the sale for them than they are advocating and getting the best home for their buyer. And so, they get the sale, and then it's like, all right, I got that one. Now let me go out hunting for another one. And they leave everything to chance that it just goes to closing, and if you just leave it and let it sit there and you just think that 6 weeks later, you're going to show up and everything's done, ready to go, and there's been no hiccups, no hurdles, no nothing in the way. That's not reality in this business, and I've seen mortgage lenders kind of do the same thing. It's like, and I'm speaking more when I'm working with sellers, but when I'm working with home sellers, I'm usually reaching out to that mortgage lender before I have my client sign something saying, hey, had a few questions about Joe and Susie here, and I try to vet as best I can, information out to make sure that we're dealing with the real deal. And, I've had mortgage lenders who, they're right there when you need them, and then you end up putting the transaction together. And next thing you know, it's like, you don't hear from them. You don't know, has the appraisal been ordered? Has it not been ordered? Where are we in the process? And once again, that just kind of just reeks at just the lack of professionalism that you can find out there, So
I mean, so then how do buyers or sellers then prepare themselves so that they can avoid, I guess on your side, realtors like that, or advice that you can give on like when they're looking to shop around for a realtor to represent them or a lender to represent them? Like, how do they prepare for that? What are the some of the signs that they can pick up to be like, oh, okay, I should stay away from that person?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, once again, I've kind of done videos on it, but just, off the top of my head, I mean, first of all, I think that you should, first of all, be looking for a realtor and mortgage lender who has good reviews online. I mean, if you could go to Google, or in our case, more, Google or Zillow or something like that, you should be looking for reviews. If there's no reviews, or there's 1 or 2 reviews, or heck, if there's bad reviews, I mean, this probably should be a red flag right there, that this is not somebody who's either done a lot of business, highly professional, or just somebody who's not taking the business too seriously. So I am a big believer in online reviews. So I do think that that's a good place where a buyer could check anonymously behind the scenes to check. But also, like I say, I think you want to have somebody that actually has a plan. I mean, with our buyers, we either meet with them before they go out in person, or we'll do it by like a Google Meet or what have you, where we'll actually go over our program, who we are, what we do, what they can expect, and ultimately how to win in a competitive situations. And if it's not a competitive situation, how to get the very best deal, how to potentially negotiate additional like contingencies to protect the buyers, or potentially, and we might start seeing this soon, maybe get some of their closing costs paid, maybe negotiate some on the price. I mean, you want to have somebody that actually has a plan, not just like, hey, okay, I'll meet you at this property at such and such a time. And, you have no idea who it is, no idea what their expertise level is and everything. So I think that it starts with that. And honestly, like I'm used to home sellers wanting to interview agents. Most of the ones I go on these days, because I've been doing it long enough, are past clients and referrals from past clients. Most of them are calling me up and saying, hey, Kevin, it's time to move, which is awesome. But I mean, quite a few times I'm also competing against 2 or 3 other agents, and you need to be able to show what your ultimate value proposition is, why you versus anybody else that's in the business. But I don't see a lot of buyers that do interviews with agents. There seems to be more effort on the consumer side. There seems to be more due diligence, more effort from home sellers checking in on the agents that they're hiring to represent them as the seller, but not so much from the buyer side. I don't see that as much. And I really think that, especially over the last 2 years, and even today, because the market is still competitive, very competitive out there. It's transitioning, but it's still very competitive. I mean, you need to know who you're working with. Goes back to what I said earlier, how well is that agent networked with other agents in the community? How many sales, what are their reviews? Do they have a team? We have a team. So, I'm not always available, but I've got 2 other team members who are licensed who are available too. And we work and collaborate together, so it's just pretty seamless.
So what about like buyers? Because I see that maybe, I mean, my guess is for sellers, they just bought a home, or not just, but they bought a home. They know how important a realtor that represents them is after purchasing it. They're like, okay, I'm going to make sure whoever's selling my property, I'm going to get top dollar, as well as they're thorough. They know what they're doing. But for a buyer, let's say they're already contracted with, or maybe they're not, and they don't even know it, that they can switch realtors, or maybe they are contracted and they want to switch. Like, what are, like, how do they go about doing that? Because I think what you're bringing up on both sides is you want to look for a realtor who has a good game plan, right? Who, for you, like, for a buyer coming in or a seller, it's like, here's my game plan on how to get you the home you want, or to sell you at a premium price. Here's what I'm going to bring to the table and help you do, which I think is a little bit opposite or contrarian to most what buyers think, right? Because most buyers are like, I found homes on Zillow, or what are they going to do beyond sending me links that I could already find on Zillow? So like, maybe it's a couple of things of, I know we're opening up Pandora box. It's like, if you could go further deeper into maybe the first question I have in my mind, which is, how can buyers, if they're in a contract, how do they kind of get out of it and go with somebody who is willing to put up a game plan for them?
That's a great question. I will tell you, over the last 2 years, I've had a lot of that. I mean, I've been oftentimes, our team has been oftentimes the second or third or fourth agent that the buyer's gone with, you know, because they just simply thought it would be as easy as, okay, I found these properties on Zillow, now open up the door for me. And it's not like that. So, you know, to those buyers who are in well, first of all, you know, just because you've gone seen a few homes as a buyer with an agent doesn't constitute an agency relationship. You know, just because you've gone out there and looked and agents opened up a few homes for you doesn't mean that that agent's representing you. Where agency is basically procured is when the buyer signs an actual exclusive buyer agency agreement with that broker, with that agent, to represent them for X period of time through November 30th, you know, whatever. If you haven't signed anything and you've been working with somebody, but you just feel like, okay, this person's, you know, not professional, they're very reactive as opposed to proactive and everything, right there, that's a major red flag and something that you probably, you know, need to consider walking away from. So it's very easy in that regard. You just let the person know, like, hey, you know what? Going in a different direction. I'm hiring, you know, somebody else to do this, you know, however they feel comfortable. Sometimes you can do the old breakup line, like, you know, it's not you, it's me.
Or break up via text.
Yeah, exactly. It's not you, it's me. You know, however you want to do that. But in seriousness, you know, I had a lot of people that have been involved with a buyer agency agreement that they've signed for a certain period of time. I can't help somebody get out of that. You know, I can't, it's against the code of ethics for me to try to tell them how to get out of it or whatever. I would say this, that each buyer agency agreement obviously should have an expiration date. And they also should have an early termination clause in there as well. If you know, if the buyer just simply changed their mind and they don't want to buy, they decide to rent, or maybe they get transferred out of the area, so they're no longer looking in the DMV, you know, or they simply, things don't work out with their agent. There should be some type of early termination. Now the question is, you know, is there any cost to that? I mean, that's that's something that they need to look at in the agreement that they signed. I do know in the agreements that we sign, I can only speak for what we do as a team, is, you know, typically our buyer agency agreements are usually for maybe 3 months. More often than not, you know, the transaction happens well before the 3 month period, but typically it's 3 months, with the understanding that, you know, if we at the end of 3 months, if they haven't found what they're looking for, but they still feel that they're well served and in the best hands of our team, then we can always extend it. We also do put in our agreements that there's a 3-day termination clause, that either side, I can terminate, they could terminate, you know, at any point in time prior to purchasing a home with 3 days notice, and there's no cost to it. And that's kind of us putting our neck on the line there, you know, because we're not getting paid while we're out showing homes and doing all this. You know, the only payday occurs only if we're successful and get them to the closing table, you know, and they get home of their dreams, and we navigate all those hurdles and get them to the finish line at that point in time. And only at that time is there a payday. So we really put ourselves out there. And that's kind of like our belief that, you know, they're going to be well served, because, you know, at any time you could really walk away, 3 days notice. And heck, you know, I don't even know why it says 3 days. It could be 3 minutes. I mean, if these people make a choice that we're not the right ones for them, or they simply decide that they're not going to buy a home, that they're going to rent, then, you know, there's no reason to, you know, to try to capture anybody, you know. I mean, to me, it's all about win-win. You know, if it's not win-win for each side, then you shouldn't be doing it. So, you know, I would just say for that, my long answer here, I would just say for that person who is in a buyer agency agreement and they feel like, you know, these things are not working out, they're not working with who they should be working with to be successful. You know, I would always say, first, look at the agreement. You should have a copy of the agreement, okay? Look at the agreement, see what the expiration is, see if there's any early termination, see if there's any cost to terminate early. And, you know, if there is, you know, and there's a problem or whatever, there's, you know, it's hard for them to be able to terminate without there being a cost. You know, they should talk to the agent and just, you know, oftentimes, you know, if they are frustrated with their agent, I will tell you, probably their agent's frustrated with them too. I mean, it usually works both ways there. And oftentimes it's like, you know what, it's cool. Let's just, you know, release each other and let's move forward. So I just think it's like, look at what you signed and then, you know, have a conversation with that agent and just say, hey, look, you know, I'm going to go a different direction here.
The agent was probably waiting for the buyer to initiate the conversation, right? The
agent was probably like, oh my God, thank God. Probably. That's 90% of the time, that's the way it is. It usually works both ways.
Yeah. So, you know, there's this whole thing that I hear when I talk to people who, at least for the first time, or maybe even seasoned buyers, they're like, hey, you know, why do I need a specific type of realtor? Or I would suggest a realtor because, you know, I'm trying to partner with the best of the best to have that great team for the client. And they're like, why do I have to work with the person that you're recommending, like Kevin? Why do I, you know, why can't I just go interview or find somebody that, you know, I just Google through? I mean, all they're going to do is show me homes. And I would say, well, they know this, they know that, or they're going to do correct market comps. He's like, oh, Zillow's doing market comps, you know, like, why should I even bother going with Kevin? Like, what would you say to someone like that?
Well, I would tell you this, that, once again, best way to describe it. I honestly look at myself and our team as, for the buyers, as your real estate Sherpa. You know, we've climbed the mountain. We've been there before. We, you know, each climb, there's going to be, you know, there's always something a little different that happens, but so much of it is always the same. We've been, you know, we know what the hurdles are. We know what the pitfalls are. We know, you know, when it comes to simply writing a contract, once again, having that relationship and the networking with the other agent, you know, being the fact that, you know, half the time I'm working for the seller, and half the time I work for the buyer, I so intimately understand the psychology from both sides of the fence that, you know, a buyer really needs an agent who understands both sides of the fence. Like, how do we make this a win-win, where it's a win for the buyer and a win for the seller? And you know, once again, navigate all the way through from not only just the writing of the contract to competing and hopefully winning that, through the whole scenario, from, you know, the appraisals and home inspections and all those type of things. So, you know, once again, there's no transaction that's ever exactly the same. However, 90% of it is the same on every transaction. It's that 10% that is different. And, you know, once again, I mean, we know the path. We've been there before. You know, if I was going to go climb Machu Picchu, I'm not going to do that on my own because I've never been there before. I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get eaten, you know, by some animal or something. And the buyers are the same out there. You know, I always say, Chris, this may not be the most PC analogy. So I kind of compare it to, you know, and this is exactly what I tell buyers. You know, right now, you're going out and looking for a home right now. There's so few out there and it is so competitive. It's a little bit like if you were going out trying to hunt down a grizzly bear. Now I know we're not supposed to be hunting grizzly bears, but just kind of stick with me.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, people. Come on, we're all adults here. But if you're going out to hunt a grizzly bear, you need everything. You need to be prepared. You need to know how to hunt it. You need to know that once it's in range, how you strike. You know, you need to have the proper proper weapons, proper everything in order to be successful. You know, if you go out there hunting for a grizzly bear and the only thing you've got is a squirt gun, you're going to get killed. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to be successful in hunting a grizzly bear. And even worse than that, you're probably going to get killed because you're just going to be annoying it. You're going to be poking that bear. And so you need to become prepared. And that means, once again, I always say defining your team before you even get out there searching. Who's going to be your real estate agent? Who's going to be that real estate Sherpa for you, who's been there before, walked the path, knows how to successfully get you to the finish line? Who's going to be that mortgage Sherpa? Are they going to be working and collaborating together? Who's going to be title? You know, who's going to be potentially my home inspector? You know, those type of things you should really know. And if interviewing is important to you, and I think that it should be, you should interview these people ahead of time to know who your team's going to be. You know, so it's not like, oh, okay, I found the grizzly bear. Now what do I do? I mean, that's what people get on Zillow. That's what people get on Redfin. You know, they can find the properties. They think they're so darn cute because they're, ooh, look at this. I found it on my own. First of all, I will say, this is a topic for another conversation. Not everything that is on the market you're going to find on Zillow or Redfin. There's also hidden inventory. Did a video about this one, Chris, so you might want to link that one. That you can find that's properties that aren't even on the market. But, you know, you'll find 98, 99% of the properties on Zillow and on Redfin. But okay, so you find it. What's next? Most people don't think that way. You know, oh, I found it. What do I do now? You know, so to me, if you're a home buyer out there, you should be defining your team early. You know, who's going to be my mortgage lender? Who's going to be my realtor? Are they able to work together? And then the extensions from there. Who's going to do title? Who's going to be my home inspector? You know, those type of things.
I think one thing that probably a lot of folks think is, oh, I don't want to waste the realtor's time. I don't want to waste the lender's time. I'm not even sure if I really want to buy a home right now or yet. I think, you know, piggybacking on what you're saying, it's like, you guys aren't, you know, wasting our time. I think it's wasting our time if you weren't even qualified and you went to Kevin and said, hey, I want to look for a $500,000 home, but all you can afford is $250,000. That's where, you know, it's like having the right sequence of events. I always like to, you know, like, I think home buying is like, you know, it's another result, right? It's a successful result of purchasing a home. And I think the pattern of success that I share with a lot of folks is kind of like unlocking those deadbolt locks, the turning locks that when we used to go to school and put on the lockers. I don't even know if they have that now or if it's all thumbprint. But when we used to open it, it's like, you know the numbers, but it's the sequence that's important, right? If you don't know the right sequence, you're never going to unlock that lock. And I think the first sequence that you're bringing up is building your team of realtor and lender. That's the first thing to do. And then from there, you know, we can start moving forward to looking at homes, finding a title company and all sorts of other things. But that's the very first step. It's not really looking at the homes. It's getting your team structure correct at the beginning.
100%. 100%. And, you know, you didn't really ask me this question, but I'm going to give you like a little bit of a shout out here. You know, on the first transaction we worked with, these buyers found both of us off of YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I think is fantastic. I mean, you know, I think I honestly, it's like the people that contact me on YouTube, it's like, it almost brings a tear to my eye. It's like, they like me. They really like me.
It's the influencer syndrome.
It is because it's like, you do these things to put yourself out there and it's like, gosh, does it really make a difference? Does anybody really care? Is anybody watching? Does anybody listening? Does what I put out there bring value? And when somebody raises their hand and says, hey, I saw you, I like, you know, will you work with me? Or what do we do to take the next steps? It's phenomenal. And, this client that, I'm mentioning, they contacted me off of YouTube. They had been working with another agent, hadn't been successful with them. Agent really didn't prepare them for anything. Once again, typical agent, just sending them links. They go out and drive around and call me if you see something that looks good. I mean, no proactivity, complete 100% reactivity, passiveness, ridiculous, because they would never be successful in this market. They contact me off of YouTube. I do the presentation, I ask them if they had a mortgage lender because, obviously I work with good mortgage lenders. I don't work with just any old schlub out there. They told me they had a mortgage lender and I was like, okay, that's great. I mean, didn't really want to like you. I'm like, this guy, whatever. But from the moment that I spoke to you, and this is before, I really had even shown them a house before, started taking them out, but we're just kind of putting those building blocks in place, defining the team. They told me that they found you off of YouTube, and I'm like, okay, well, if he's been on YouTube, then he obviously has a certain level of professionalism, takes his job seriously, because, we're that 1% who do that. I mean, not very many, and you don't have to be a great agent. You don't have to be a great agent, to be on YouTube or whatever. But when you see people who, are putting out good content and everything on a regular basis, you're like, okay, that's obviously a certain level of professionalism out there. I mean, you just have to like that, and you have to admire that somebody's putting themselves out there, giving content away for free, And so, I contacted you, we spoke on the weekend. I never forget it. And I just said, hey, Chris, I'm working with these clients here. My understanding is you are too. Yep, Kevin, nice meeting you. Thanks for the call. And we talked about it and we kind of collaborated right over the phone. And I said, this is what I need. This is what I expect. I want to make sure you can deliver. I expect, I'm not a jerk. I'm not going to call you and text you and bug you in the middle of the night just to bug you. But you know what? I need to know that if these guys find a property and I need a pre-approval letter at 8 p.m. on a Thursday, that you're at least going to be responsive to me and you can at least have something to me by the next morning at best, preferably sooner than that. I also need to know that you're willing to pick up the phone, make a phone call to that other agent who's representing the seller to once again be that 1-2 punch between me and you, advocating for the buyer, making sure our story lines up together, that it's not like I'm saying one thing and you're saying something completely different, to make sure that our case is rock solid. That's advocating for our, your customer, my client there. And so it became, it only took me 10 minutes on the phone to realize that you had that level of professionalism that they needed to be successful. And at that point, it's like, I don't need them going anywhere else. If they had a mortgage lender who was at a credit union, like, I can't return calls after 4 p.m. I'm going to tell the buyers once again, hey, your choice, you can use them, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to lose some houses. Are you prepared to lose some houses? I mean, because if you are, then that's okay. Actually, it's not okay, because it's not okay for me. It's not okay for me to be putting my time in when you're working with somebody who's completely inferior on the other end. So, that's kind of how you and I met and everything. And, that transaction was super smooth. I mean, I think we closed it in 2 weeks or whatever, no problems whatsoever. And so, that's I became a big believer then.
Me too. I mean, I was like, whoa, I just met a YouTube star that called me. I was so excited. Huge. So let's end with that. So how did you start YouTube and get on it? I know, like, for a lot of us, it's either we want to increase branding. For some of us, it's like, I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. Maybe there's a better way to send educational information to them. So what spurred you on, and when did you start? I know you said you started real estate 30 years ago, but YouTube wise, like, when did you start? And then,
well, Chris, so I started real estate 30 years ago. I actually started YouTube 35 years ago. No, actually I didn't. That would not be a true statement. But you know, I started YouTube in summer of 2019.
Okay.
And it was for a few different reasons. Number one, I could see how video was really taking off, and that, you know, my reach could be could really be expanded, you know, through video much more than just by postcards or emails or things like that. So I became, you know, I've always been kind of interested in video, but I mean, I started my YouTube channel in 2019, once again, to kind of expand reach and everything. The other thing, if I'm completely honest, was to exercise the frustration that I had of never becoming that ESPN sports anchor that I wanted to become. And I just figured it was too late to do that. So it's like, yeah, well, ESPN's not going to become, you know, knocking on my door. So, but I can start a YouTube channel. So I can exercise that, you know, that demon in me. I should have done that. And I'm actually not kidding about that. And the other thing was, just like to your point, it's like, you know, we get asked, when I first started it, it was mostly, the videos were mostly based around the questions I get asked every day. And I find myself repeating over and over and over again, which, you know, are good questions, but, you know, you find that, once again, while every transaction is different, 90% of the transactions are pretty much the same over and over and over again. Yeah. So, you know, I started doing videos based around a lot of the frequently asked questions that I get, things like that. My earliest videos, and, you know this about me. I mean, I'm not, you know, I do the best I can to stay up on tech, but I'm not the best at, you know, with some of that stuff. But, you know, my first videos I did all by myself, with the exception of, I did not do editing. And so when I say that, when I did everything by myself, I did it with my iPhone. My iPhone had a teleprompter in it. So I had to write the script. I had a teleprompter. I had a cheap mic, some cheap, you know, lighting and everything. And a 5-minute video for me literally would take me like 8 hours. I mean, because I wanted it to be perfect. And actually, I'm going to switch over here. So this done is better than perfect is my new mantra, because I tend to like everything to be perfect. And, but also, you know, that perfection is never going to happen with everything, or really with anything. And so, you know, while we want to be experts in our craft and things like that, you know, oftentimes you get bogged down just by everything trying to be perfect, because it's never going to be there. So anyways, segue. But it was just taking too long. My goal was to put up a video a week, and I simply couldn't do that if I'm taking 8 hours doing it. And then I was sending it to an editor through Fiverr, who was probably, you know, overseas somewhere, didn't know who I was and everything. So the editing would come back, and it was kind of wonky, wasn't what I liked. And there was constant changes, so I just couldn't do it every week. And so my father passed away in summer of 2019, after I'd done like 4 or 5 videos. And I'm just like, I just dropped it. I mean, I dropped it for 6 months. I kicked myself to death that it's like, gosh, Kevin, you know, you committed to doing this and you're not doing it. But I just did not have the bandwidth at the time, with my dad passing away and all that. And, but then the pandemic rolls around 6 months later, and, I knew that I wanted to get back to doing video. And I knew also that it was becoming more important, because we weren't going to be able to see people like we were. I can't just do all these physical face-to-face appointments. Everybody's masked up, nobody in the house, social distancing. And so I knew that, you know, I had 2 things working. I had kicking myself that I dropped it for 6 months, and then, you know, looking at it like, holy cow, I got to get on it now, because I'm not going to be able to see people. This is the way to kind of get messages through now. And it was just so cool. I had a property that I was putting on the market, and I met a photographer, videographer at the property just to shoot the home. I mean, it wasn't for me, it was just to shoot the home. And this is as the world was closing down, like February, March of 2020. And I said, hey man, I'm like, do you ever do like side work? I mean, like, you know, I got this YouTube channel, I'm really looking to get it up and running. He's like, well, first of all, everything I do is side work. This is side work here. So the answer is yes. I said, well, this is what I'm talking about. I'm doing a video a week. You know, I'm thinking that maybe we get together once a month. I'll come up with 4 different scripts and 4 different shirts. And we can, we'll do 4 videos, and you do the editing, you post them on YouTube and everything. And that's what we did. And it's amazing, you know, it's so much easier for me. Now I pay for this, but it's so much easier. The quality level's better. And what's easier for me is like, he keeps me on track. You know, it's like in the past when I was doing it all myself, like I'd go through and I'd do a great video and be like, oh man, that was awesome. And realize I didn't have my mic turned on. I'm like, are you kidding me? So, you know, he keeps me on task. You know, I've always got my mic on, the lighting's just right. And, you know, we kind of roll through things. And so, you know, like a video right now for me that ends up like a 10-minute video probably takes me 20 minutes to shoot, because there's always some, you know, you know, bloops and blunders or whatever. But yeah, that's what's made it sustainable. And you know, it's cool because you know, for the first 12 months I was doing it, I mean, I didn't get really much of anything. I mean, you know, I think my mom liked it. And you know, a few of my Facebook friends are like thumbs up, or, you know, of course we all have those people who like say they're in your court, but are all the haters that are like, well, you know, you know, you had a booger in your nose or something like that, you know. It's like, dude, seriously, come on. You know, but it really wasn't getting much traction at all, but I just kept with it. And literally in the last like 8 months, I've had 9 sales directly and organically from YouTube. And I'm telling you, it's like, it's amazing. The quality, I don't even call these leads. Like I don't do online leads. Like I'm about relationships, building relationships. And what I've been doing through the YouTube channel is slowly but surely. I mean, I'm not getting loaded with calls coming in. I wish I was, but you know, pretty consistently now I'm getting 1 or 2 people, and I'm not even calling them leads. They're calling me up, and more often it's like, hey, we've been watching your videos. Will you work with me? It's incredible because they've already oftentimes seen a lot of your videos. They get a sense of who you are. I think that when they talk to me on the phone, or even heck by email or text, they understand that the person they're talking to is pretty much the same person they're seeing on video. It's very authentic to me. I mean, I'm not, you know, I like to have good content. I like to have good information. I like to mentor. I like to help people, whether they come to me or not. I like to do that. It makes me feel good about me, and that I'm hopefully planting good seeds out there. And so I think that comes through. And so it's funny because like when the people will reach out to me, like, oh my gosh, you're like exactly the same on the phone. Like you're joking with us, you know, but you're serious, you know? And so I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's because that's who I am. I mean, so I just think that being authentic and everything really, you know, pays off, not trying to be somebody you're not. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Kevin, this was so much fun. So I'm going to link everybody, Kevin's social media contact info below this video in the description. But Kevin, what's the best way for everybody to kind of contact you if they're interested in working with you?
The best way is I'll give you my home address. No, I'm kidding. The best way to reach me, you know, probably is text. I mean, email as well. My email address is kevin@kevingrolig.com. So first name last name.com. You know, I'm sure you'll spell it out there somewhere, Chris. But texting is probably the best way. And that's my number's 240-793-7495. Just shoot me a text.
All right. So if you're interested in working with Kevin, you can shoot him a text. And I say send him an email because he is a busy person. So just in case you don't reach him with one, you can reach him with the other. So thanks again, Kevin, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we could do this again next time.
Chris, this is a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity and definitely will do it again.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.